Good morning.
Good morning.
Looks like our mics are working. Testing.
So, how are you doing, birthday girl? It's your birthday
not my
week.
birthday yet.
I know. I keep thinking it's Friday. Your birthday is on Friday and it's Saturday. That time thing.
That time thing. Right?
Yeah. Well, and you're a Virgo sun, and last night tonight is that powerful new moon in Virgo energy. And I am feeling something today.
Yeah.
It's funky.
I'm trying to remember what Virgo new moon, because I've read a ton of stuff and none of it's stuck.
Yeah, same. What I remember is it's really an opportunity to shed these samskars or these layers that we've been working with, to just say, and I'm done, and let it go. But you're a Virgo, so speak to what Virgo energy is specifically.
Well, what's always a kicker is, and I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, is usually we don't just identify with that sign, right?
Right, exactly.
So I'm Virgo. I actually have a shit ton of Virgo in my chart.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Virgo. My rising is Virgo. My moon and my sun are Virgo. Like it's,
yeah.
And I have other energies in there as well. But I used to never resonate with Virgo because Virgos are perfectionists. Virgos are like, and that's the piece that I'm like, I'm not a perfectionist. And I'm so, yeah, thanks, laugh. I said used to. And I'm like, that's so not me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh,
and I'm only laughing because A, it feels really damn good this morning, and B,
Thank God.
I, as one perfectionist to another, I totally get it. Oh, that's funny.
I am not a perfectionist. So Virgos are good with taking a system, for example, and seeing how it could be better. Virgos
I love that. That's so you.
I don't know. Like, there's some pieces that you're like, okay, all right. And so here's the Virgo part of me that's struggling right now, is as I'm letting go, because you spoke to this before we started the podcast of, doesn't that feel good just to be like, okay, I'm not going to post our video this week because that wasn't where my time wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I have been in a deeper layer of surrender and presence, which is very challenging for my personality. Very challenging. Because Virgos, I think Virgos especially have a tendency to be controlling too. Because if you're a perfectionist, then you want to control the outcomes.
Right, right.
So my personality too can see all the little flaws in myself and in others, which is a really great quality to have. I'm being very sarcastic when I say that because trust me, my husband would be like, oh, there's a hair out of place, or you have a zit, let me get that for you. Or my own, like it's 10 times worse in my own head of myself.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I turned 41 on Saturday.
Yeah. What element is associated with Virgo? I always get that one mixed up. It's an earth sign. Yeah.
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 Anyway, how are you doing today?
Like I said, I feel like in this weird, funky vortex of I don't know what. So I woke up unexpected. Well, I fell asleep really early last night because I had been awake early the morning before and was dead asleep and all of a sudden just awake.
Oh, really?
I think it was 2:30 this morning.
Oh.
And I was like, what was that? And there was a weird sound, which is probably the new cat be doing her nocturnal whatever. She's crazy at night. And so I was just laying there trying to get to sleep. I couldn't get to sleep, so I got up and I had a bit of just my body was achy. So, took some Advil, had something to eat, and then I put on, and maybe this is why, I put on Clarissa Pincole's essays, Women Who Run with the Wolves. I put on her book and started listening, just hoping that would occupy my brain so my body could fall back asleep, and it did. But so if you don't know that book, she talks about our fairy tales or our deep tribal stories and how they've been changed to either still the truth of it, and she's bringing it back to the practice of being a wild woman, basically, of reclaiming that wildness within ourselves that has been bred out of us, if you will, for lack of a better word. So maybe that, because when I woke up this morning, trying to walk a straight line. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
You feel a little bit more wild today.
I don't know. Maybe. I know I don't have much fucks to give today, so that's definitely an energy I'm like. And every song I was listening to this morning was about, yeah, I have no fucks to give. Like, okay, we're claiming this energy today, you know.
I was listening to I had a really hard day earlier this week. Was it this week? So did my husband, and I'm like, we need to just go for a walk. And I ended up re-listening to some old sessions I had with Layla, who she's this amazing, she channels, but she does light language activations and things. And her awareness and consciousness is a very high, I don't know how, it's hard to put this into words, but you know how some people are still really in their own process as their healers. She definitely carries a very high vibration of what she's bringing in, a higher level, I think I should, or maybe that's a better way to put it. But I was re-listening to some of our recordings, and it was fascinating on the one hand, because I'm like, oh, okay, I have progressed in my life from, you know, some of the things that I was experiencing at that time. And she said something, I was talking about how I was bringing in, I could feel the divine feminine coming in. This was back in October of last year. Little did I know. Anyway, and she said, you know, one of the things that I think that gets misconstrued, or one of the pieces that she said that has happened. See, like that I can't even talk today. Good God. Is that part of coming into the divine sacred feminine is going into all those vulnerable places that we keep as protection and allowing us to really look in there and then shed it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is another huge layer of all of us collectively shedding some aspect of old belief systems, what have you. And then the next day, I think it was, I was on social media, and she had posted that she believes in order to go to ascension, to go in our ascension process, we actually have to go through the subconscious, not the conscious. And I'm like 100%, because our subconscious is where our holdings are that are, you know, we're reacting to and we don't even realize it. So until we make that conscious.
Well, that's the whole work of Joe Dispenza, right? Is those unconscious programs that are running, the default programs that are running our show.
Yeah, and a lot of times we're not even aware of it.
Right. And on a cosmic level, that brings up to me the goddess Inanna, which her archetype energy is about going to the depths, like going down into your underworld. And I don't know that underworld's the right word. You can help me with this because of shamanism. Lower world, yeah. And really looking.
They talk about, I mean, it's like hell is what she's essentially going through.
Which to me, hell is where you're living in your shadow and you're unconscious.
Deep, dark shadow that scares the crap out of you, but you go into it anyway.
Yeah, and really sitting in it and unraveling it and healing it and claiming it. I feel that's a really important piece. It's in all the healing work I've done, one of the most impactful truths that I came across was doing shadow work doesn't mean that we just say, okay, I see this and now it's not a part of me. It's actually, I see this and this is me as well as this is me. You know what I mean? And it's an integration piece of pulling it in, but it's no longer that active unconscious pain that's running the show. But it doesn't mean that it's not a part of us. It's still a piece of the puzzle of who makes me me, you know? So the goddess Inanna, she goes down into hell, the depths of hell, into the depths of shadow. And really it's like that ego death. It's that complete claiming of all of that. And then she rises back up.
Shedding all the layers.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I spoke to this before, I feel like it's not like we just have one ego death.
Oh, no.
It's like there have been, and that I think sometimes gets really challenging. And I know that's kind of where I'm sitting a little bit, or have been sitting a little bit with, you know, what else? What else is going to be asked of us to really shed? To look at, to let go of. And sometimes sometimes it's hard. And really, the only reason why it's hard is because for me, this was another lesson this week, is I went into judgment. And when you go into judgment, it stops all movement.
It creates separation.
You know, I'm turning 41. What the fuck am I doing with my life? You know, what am I? and I went through another mourning phase of my business and what was and what I thought it was going to be. And it's similar to relationships. You know, we just launched released our episode today about divorce, and I love the title that you picked with it's a practice of self-love and all those places, and moving into the past, which pulls you out of the present. You go into judgment, and then there isn't movement. Right. You know, it doesn't serve. And so that has been I've had a few big lessons this week, which
I know. I love that you keep saying shedding the layers, because that is something I feel very strongly right now. It's interesting. Like, I just keep seeing the snake, and I want to do like this weird, like, slither, like moving, like, just get this off, you know.
When I was calling in Sachamama, Val and I always open sacred space. I posted about this a little bit, but we always open sacred space, and today was my turn. So in shamanic practice, the south is Sachamama, and the serpent helps us to shed that which no longer serves in one motion as she sheds her skin. And when I was calling her in, I saw the exact same thing. I saw her coming in and going into those dark places, just moving it out.
Yeah, I almost like need to move on the floor like a snake. Maybe I'll do that later. Feel better. Embody that. So Sachamama is snake energy.
Snake energy. She goes belly to belly with the mother.
Yeah.
But her biggest representation is shedding that which no longer serves.
Yeah.
But in one motion, it can be gentle and it can be easy, and really it's not like one scale at a time that we're shedding. It's like just the whole skin, and oftentimes we have several layers of skin, and that, which is very true. That's the ego death. Okay, fine, I'm gonna let this go, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I had a friend ask me the other day if, like, we could, I'm trying to remember exactly how he phrased it, but if we could have several egos all active at the same time, like in war or battle with each other, and how to work with that. And I was like, yeah, I actually feel that. I feel like that could be like timelines, even like this part of me wants to go this way, this part of me wants to go that way, this part of me thinks this, and this part, and finding an integration of all those pieces into one. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I'm thinking multiple things, to be completely frank. On the one hand, I feel like, no, we don't have more than one ego, but that ego has several thoughts. And a lot of times for me, in my experience, and fairly recently, probably within the last year, I had all these things that I wanted to do, and it was kind of pulling me. So that ego thing of, I should be doing this, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing this, actually was a fear tactic. It was feeling like I need to be seen, or I need to be heard, or I need to do something good in this world. So I'm creating all these things to do, and I'm getting so scattered I don't even know where to go, instead of just letting go, being in the now moment, and then allowing whatever wants to come in. So I feel like the answer is no, only because I've been studying a little bit more of the energetic anatomy too, where we have in the basicness of it, you have the physical body, the mental, emotional, the spirit, and the energetic matrix.
Right.
And the ego, I wonder where the ego lands in the energetic matrix. I think it's the mental, emotional body, that it would hang out in there. But then in Egyptian mythology, there's several light bodies. The Ka body, the Khat body. I have this all written down somewhere because
Which my guess is they correspond to what you said. They just have different titles.
Well, there's a lot more. There's I feel like there's 9. Energetic. Anyway, so it's really interesting. And the only reason why I was looking at that was because I'm reading the Magdalene manuscript.
Yeah, I want to crack that one open again.
Yeah, I'm reading it so different this time. Yeah. It's fascinating. And one of the pieces that really has stuck, and it's along the lines of what we're talking about, is when you connect in sacred sex with a partner, and in my belief system, especially with what I'm reading, this really only happens with a partner where you feel safe, held, honored, loved.
Absolutely.
So it's your monogamous partner, right, in my experience. In that space, when you connect in sacred sex and you allow yourself to experience ecstasy, and you're connecting in the Ka body, which is the spirit, it's the it's part of your energetic anatomy. It actually moves density out of the physical body. It's a cleansing, it's a purging. And I thought that was so fascinating, and I don't remember reading that before with how, and I wish I could remember exactly how it was worded, but it was like, oh, this is interesting. Even this act of, we sit here, especially in as, okay, now I'm going down the spiritual path, and we somewhat get addicting to healing because we're trying to be our God selves incarnate in this earth, bringing heaven to earth. And we get in those loops sometimes of, okay, what's next, what's next, what's next? And even just the act of enjoying ourselves and having sex and ecstasy and exploring that in that sacred union, like that act can actually move out density and shadow aspects of us. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel that sacred union is communion, like it's connecting with our God self and someone else's God self, and in that creative space of that sexual energy, which is creation, you're creating a vortex, a third field of what you said, moving density, of healing, of creation, of connecting to something higher. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for those of you who've never heard of this book, I highly recommend it if this is something that's interesting to you. It is something that you can practice on your own. You don't have to have a partner, but it does change the dynamic a little bit. And really, it's the sacred, I think she calls it a cult of Isis. The school
sex
of Isis.
Sex magic of Isis and something.
Hathor,
yeah.
And then together they create Osiris.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And Isis in this book is talked about as the cosmic mother.
Yeah.
Because she has several different names. But anyway, just the whole act though of again going into the sacredness of sex, enjoying yourself, ecstasy, and how there's a paragraph in there that says a lot of religion has created shame around this to block that expansion of our energetic and physical matrix, because when it's the ka body that just sits right outside the physical body. When you start bringing that into that sex magic, that actually comes down into the physical body. So after sex, you actually sit there in the radiance of what's happening and what's moving.
Well, and that's where the ecstasy comes, right? Is that movement of that energy through your body, through the chakras, through that kundalini movement from
the
root to up to, well, source really, but through specifically the pineal, right?
Yeah, because you have the red and the gold, not red, black and gold snakes, serpents that come up and go through the 7 seals of the chakras, and then they crown, in a sense, over it. It talks about it like a chalice where your pineal is, and they actually excrete. Your brain secretes fluids.
Right.
Anyway, it's fascinating. Totally getting off on a tangent, but
it's sex. I love that.
and that's what I'm reading right now. Oh, the reason why I was kind of bringing this up is so I'm reading with 2 other friends right now. It's interesting to go through a process of what's kind of what's blocking us from moving into, because usually there are some sort of resistance, whether it's been past hurts or shame and guilt for having sex in general because of
trauma,
you name it. And we did a 3-card story, and it was fascinating to do. I don't know if I think we might do it in our mini wheel next week.
Cool.
And it's always fascinating to see what's reflected back to you. And what was reflected back to me was that I carried a lot of anger almost towards the masculine, to the point to where I'm turning the sun red, and was kind of just denying the feminine, because I'm going through a huge not dying of the masculine, but accepting it enough, or allowing the feminine to come in enough with safety and with love that the masculine can gracefully step aside, I guess, in my own physical, energetic body. So it was really interesting to see how much anger that I'm still carrying there. And then this brought me to an interesting thought. I'm curious, I haven't shared this with you. So I'm sitting there afterwards because this last week has been challenging, and men are having a hard time right now, and from what I've seen in my circles. And we talked about this before with that Neo-Wise comment coming in, bringing in the feminine, and moving now from a masculine patriarchy system that we've been in for however many years. Dang it.
wild twisting skills.
I was, after we had done all this work and I was just kind of sitting with this, and the energetics on the planet are intense. They have been this whole year, and we have 3 more waves from what I understand. And I was just listening to some stuff yesterday, outside of all the politics and all that stuff that's happening. If our planet as a living, breathing thing, and us as a consciousness of oneness that's asking to experience what we've experienced for the last 1,000 years, and now we're asking to have a different experience, it would create a surge of the masculine, the old masculine that's been held, patriarchy. I mean, there's so much power, greed, sex in a negative holding that's been on the planet for 1,000 years. And even this book that's channeled, that one, that the Magdalene manuscript was channeled, and she came through specifically
Mary Magdalene
came through specifically to clear this whole thing that the church has said that she's a whore, and really tell her story and what it really was. So if this is now dying, anything that dies usually comes up to a head, right? It starts rearing its ugly head more, and you're seeing it more, the anger, the violence, the rage, everything, which is a very masculine trait, right? And then the feminine, it's like, okay, how do we hold this, and how do we support this as it starts transitioning into more of the feminine? But I was just noticing, for me, I just had this awareness of, God, this is part of what's happening with our planet right now, is the masculine dying off. And can we that have been negatively impacted in this life, past lifetimes, from masculine rituals, I mean, some of the really shadowy stuff, can we honor what has been, have our healing around it, let it go, so that it no longer is active on the planet? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and just for me, it feels like I want to clarify that the masculine energy does not mean men specifically. It's more an energy that can be held by men and women both, right? And yes, I agree with you. There's an amplification that's happening right now so that it can be seen. And I believe that energy is fighting for survival. And
they're in a corner.
Yeah.
What happens when an animal is in a corner?
Yeah. And I've been saying all along, you cannot change anything with the same energy that it's created from. So in order for things to shift from an unbalanced, ugly, patriarchal, that's power driven, that's all these low density energy, you cannot use the same energy to transmute it. You can't. And so I love the words that you used, is the divine feminine comes in and holds it. It doesn't fight against it. It doesn't like polarize. It holds it in this space of kind of like what we were talking about earlier. The shadow work isn't something we just like cut out of us and place over there. It's
pretend it doesn't exist, because that's doesn't work.
It's a holding, and it's a holding in love, a holding of understanding, a holding of
acceptance.
It's a part of it, and the transmutation, I feel, is going from an unbalanced masculine energy into the divine masculine. And the last, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, I've been asking to understand what the fuck that even is. Like, what is a divine masculine energy? Because I don't know that it's been present on the planet for a really long time. And I don't know that the collective knows what that is either. And so it's interesting, as so much attention has been placed on the divine feminine, and Mary Magdalene bringing in these light codes. It's like that has to be balanced with the divine masculine. And so there needs to be a birthing, if you will, of the divine masculine through that energy of holding the out of balance masculine. And what does that look like?
Well, and I feel like in order for the divine masculine to really be held, the divine feminine really has to be birthed, which has happened and happening, and even us as women are trying to understand and fill into what does that look like.
Yeah.
Because the feminine is where creation happens. I mean, you it's the dark vortex of what needs to be held and then birthed through, there's the masculine element in there. But I think that's a little bit more with what I've been sitting with, is how can I individually step more into my divine feminine and what I feel like it looks like and operates in, and all of those places, and holding just my partner, for example, in his divine masculine, and allowing him to start feeling into what that looks like and giving him space to do that. And what I feel like is happening within me as I'm doing this is I feel like I'm feeling and mirroring what's happening on the planet, because the uneasiness that I feel in my body, the anxiousness, the almost, I feel like I can almost see an image of me trying to grab back in what I've known because it's comfortable.
Right.
And so it's kind of like that frantic, and I'm trying to just be with it, but I'm definitely irritable, shorter tempered, that, and I'm like, okay, I hate this, and it is, it is what it is. But I do find that is an interesting, I feel like that for sure is one of the elements, one of the biggest pieces that's happening on the planet outside of, there's so many layers in this.
Yeah. For me, the divine feminine is the space of unknown. It is, because true creation can only come from the place of the unknown. Otherwise, it's just a repeat, a refabrication, an echo of something that's already been. And like on our planet, that's who the fuck knows what's going to happen next. Like, it's in this like frantic energy of all these things and this quiet stillness of what's next.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like this anticipation. Like I keep feeling this
angst almost.
Well, no, just this feeling of something, and I don't know. I can't name it, and that feels uncomfortable. And I can't predict. Like I was thinking about Thanksgiving and possibly going to see my brother, and I'm like, I don't even know what to expect post-election. Are we going to have an election? Yeah. And, just letting go of what has been and embracing that we don't know where we're going. I don't feel like anyone knows where we're going. And that is divine feminine energy. And it's uncomfortable because we have not lived that.
Well, and it's the control aspect. I can plan 6 months. I've got this to look forward to. And which pulls us also out of the present moment, which then is also that double-edged sword of, but I do need to plan, because if I get my flights now, they're cheap, all the things that we've known for as long as we've known. So the North we talked about is timelessness, and there's a piece that keeps ringing in my ears about how don't create, and it reminded me of what you just said, don't create your future from your past.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Glenn Beck last night, which was, I highly recommend his latest podcast with Candace Owens and some other guy, I can't remember his name. It was a hard one to listen to in a lot of ways. But at one point he says, I'm going to tell you a story. He goes, I don't know if he started it with, I'm going to tell you a story. We've had a president who has been ridiculed, his entire first term. He goes through all these different things, the mail-in ballots, yada, 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 yada. And he goes, I'm talking about President Lincoln in 1896. Everything that he said is happening right now. It was so trippy to listen to. And yet, Lincoln was the reason why people were trying to not get him into a second term was because he wanted to continue the Civil War, because he had only won the South for ending slavery and not the whole nation. And he wanted to continue it. And so there were people that actually wanted the mail-in ballots, and that that wasn't that was different back then. Yeah. And people that were actually put in prison because they manipulated hundreds and hundreds, I think it was thousands of ballots, and Lincoln eventually won. But it was really interesting, and I feel like what's interesting in everything that I'm hearing, and so this is that double-edged sword. You want to be somewhat aware of what's going on the planet, and then there's that other part of what we're speaking to. Can we just sit in the stillness of what is in our bubble and just hold that space? And yet, what is happening on our planet? Should I do, whatever it is? So it's kind of that, how do I find the neutral, the middle ground between the two? But I know they were talking about how it is very likely that this will be our last election that we will ever have. Just because Hillary Clinton actually said that no matter what, Joe Biden will win. We will go push. I can't remember exactly how she said it, but it was a very disturbing comment. And you're having people saying that there's gonna be a civil war no matter who gets put into office.
Yeah, to me, so a couple things, like that's interesting about President Lincoln.
Talking about timelines, it's trippy.
Well, in family constellations, we talk about fractals and how when something happens, it's an energy field, right? And until that energetic field, that original experience finds healing and balance, you continue to have these echoes or fractals that keep playing through time.
Yeah.
So that is fascinating that President Lincoln and President Trump are experiencing similar things.
Almost
to me,
identical.
that's like a fractal, right? And whether or not, whatever your politics are, just looking at a big picture, it's interesting that this is not the first time we've been here. And hopefully it will be the last, and we've become so polarized as a country, as people, and that polarization is just pulling us in division,
Right.
which is so contrary to what I feel is being asked of finding oneness or finding connection as a human race to work together. Not meaning that we're going to be homogenous, not meaning that we're all going to be on the same page, not meaning we're all going to believe the same way, but there's at least cooperation, collaboration. There's a pulling together for humanity.
There was a respectful, and I think he spoke to this in the podcast. He's like, I've had lots of friends that are Democrats that I might not agree with what the politics are, but it's around, billing or whatever the things are that they're trying to put into play. But he goes, it is not even close to the same as what it used to be. It's so drastically, like you're talking about, this polarization, this huge split.
Yeah, and so much like judgment. Again, judgment, like, it pulls us out of movement forward,
And the kicker is there's a lot of things that are happening on our planet that are wrong. And so there is a natural judgment. The sex trafficking is wrong. The things that are starting to come. I was just reading this thing about how we do need to start protecting our children more. I mean, they're getting more aggressive with taking children. I don't know if you've seen some of these videos.
No, I don't watch them.
But there's awareness around that needs to happen, of parents being very, there's a sex offender that just got released out of prison that just moved in like a couple blocks down. I'm like, holy crap, in our little bubble?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, shit.
Yeah. And again, like fear, I refuse to live in fear anymore. And if you are driven by fear, if you make your choices because of fear, if you hold your world in a space of fear, you're going to get more things to be fearful of. And to me, that pulls you out of sovereignty. So,
and that, though, is a big part of what's happening in the planet, too.
Absolutely. I feel like fear is being wielded as a tool.
Yeah, and who's it being wielded by? And that is, if you start going down the I don't know what to call it.
I think it's being wielded by everyone, honestly. I feel like, and that is the ask, is to maybe let go of all of that and really be in your own space and trusting your alignment to source and where that moves you, how that moves you, what choices you make based on my life is exactly where it should be. I trust that life always shows up for me. I trust that however I move, it's going to create this vortex in support of me, which then ripples out of shifting energy, right? Rather than looking outside of ourselves to this side or that side or right or wrong, or it's an alignment piece to me.
And you do need to do research, because right now you can't be ignorant of what's happening on the planet. You could, but then you're not participating in, I don't know, and our whole podcast is about finding oneness and duality.
Right.
We're talking about the dualistic world that is so prevalent on the planet right now.
Right.
That both things are true. What you're saying is true. What I'm saying is there's truth, because there's a part of me that's like, God, I do want to continue to bring awareness to what I believe is happening on the planet, and knowing that everyone's going to have a different holding of however they believe and choose. And part of where I'm in alignment is because I have gone and done research and listened to things and what's happening in our planet. And it's just a resonance. You know, why do some people feel like they've got to go be in politics in the first place? Well, there's a soul calling to them. So it's like everybody has that piece.
That's what I was going to say, is that is your alignment, but that doesn't mean that's my alignment. You know what I mean? And I feel like one of my early days of yoga, there was this awesome teacher named Rodney, and he studied integral yoga, which really holds all spiritual paths as one. And he said, life is like a play. And in this dualistic world, every part is represented. You have the villain, you have the rescue, the warrior, you have all these archetypal energies that are active. And for me to say, oh, I got to do all this research, but it doesn't feel as truth in my body, that's not my alignment. But for you, where you say, I am so drawn to research this and to know and to share and to have my voice out there, that's your Aini, that's your alignment. And I feel like that is part of the problem right now, is everyone's trying to project their truths on the collective, where it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And so for me to show up in what feels like my soul calling, if you will, and maybe that's on a different flavor in the stew than someone else's soul calling, but somehow all those parts are being met, you know, and so then you get the beautiful flavor of the pot. This
has been something that has been a part of what I've been letting go, that's very challenging to, and even speaking to it's going to be difficult for me. But that, not the ego place, but when we all talk about like our soul's mission or our purpose, everyone wants to figure that out. Like, that's a big question. I feel like most of us ask ourselves at some point in our lives. And for me, I've always felt like, I'm meant to do, I want to do something that impacts the world. Like, it's been always like this big vision. And part of what I am letting go, or I'm questioning, is, what if I didn't do that? You know, what if and this is a new level of this question that I've been asking, what if I was quiet? What if I just sat and actually held space? What if I expanded my energy field and not held it in and, you know, as protection, but actually expanded it out, because my vibration and the things that I'm holding now in my life can do that. And yet there's not a whole lot of action behind it. It's not really seen or heard. Maybe it's felt, but most people aren't going to understand that that's what they're feeling. And so it's an interesting phenomenon, and it's very uncomfortable for me to go from I'm writing a book, I feel like I'm here to make a difference in the world, I'm doing sessions, we're doing this podcast, you know, being seen, being heard, blah, blah, blah. I can offer something to the world that will impact people, to maybe I don't. Maybe we have 5 people that listen to this, and am I okay with that? And it's a challenge, it's a struggle for me, because so much of my life has been wired the other way. I'm meant to do something big. I've always seen me speaking in front of thousands of people, and now I don't know. Now I'm going into can I be completely in presence, understanding that I really actually don't know a fucking thing, which is a very hard place for me to be too. And when things come in, then I act on them, and I let go of everything else. Can I be in that space? That's really the core of my ego death that I'm going through. And it's pain. It's challenging. I don't want to say painful, but in some ways it is. It's, you know, especially, it's like that little girl that's had the dream that one day I'll be, it's like, oh, well, we're just going to let that die.
Well, that is stepping into the unknown, and that is uncomfortable. Someone asked, my friend asked me, what's your 5-year plan? I was like,
oh, right.
I'm just trying to figure out what my plan is for today. You know, like 5 years, who the hell knows? Like,
what's the point?
And I just, okay, maybe I can hold some ideals of what, for me, it's more of like how I want to be feeling in 5 years.
I agree with that.
And I'm not really sure what that's going to mean, or what it'll look like, or what'll be presented. And I mean, I never thought I would be here in life at 46. I never saw this. This was not part of my plan.
Right.
And yet it's been, looking back, it's been a beautiful journey. And it's not all been rainbows and ponies. There's been a lot of dark places and a lot of shedding of layers and a lot of loneliness and a lot of deep sadness.
Right. Yeah.
And it's made me who I am.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was just talking, I went to lunch with a friend of mine yesterday, and on the way there, I'm like going through emotions of anxiety to my brain going everywhere. And then I sit down because I had beat her and I got a table. All of a sudden I like feel like I want to cry. I'm like, what is happening with me? And she sits down and she's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I don't even know how to answer that question right now. And so I said a few little things. I'm like, how are you doing? She's like, I'm doing so wonderful. I woke up just feeling so much gratitude. As she goes off, and I'm like, and I can feel it exuding off her. And I'm like, I'm just gonna drink that for a minute.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. She was talking a little bit about how, especially in the spiritual community, a lot of times we get caught up in the past lives, or I'm Palladian, or I'm Arcturian, or I had a life in I can't even, Lemuria, or I'm Atlantean, instead of, okay, maybe all that's true, but you're human now. You're human now, having a human experience that causes pain and heartache and challenge and struggling and joy and love and expansion and yada yada yada. And I think that's something that does happen a lot, that we have a tendency to escape, whether it's in the spiritual community of going out of our bodies, or it's through drugs, alcohol, that part of just not, and that's part of the practice of presence of, can I be in this physical human body now, having an experience in this realm, connecting with my energetics, connecting with those pieces, but always honoring the physical. Because I do feel like, and I'm still learning this, that our physical body is really the place that helps us to connect to the gifts, to connect to our higher self, to connect to the earth, you know. That's how having sex and all
well, maybe that's the whole fucking point, right? Yep. And maybe that is us in our God self 100%, is having a tactile, polarized, multi-level experience, and this is the only place we get it.
Well, you have a lot of people, and I would agree with that. I've heard this over the years, that we chose to come to Earth because it is a dense planet, so we learn quicker.
Yeah.
But pains, emotions, those things, that emotions are felt at such a deeper, to my understanding, it's not felt on other planets like it is here.
Yeah.
So our expansion and growth is more rapid in the incarnations that we choose to have here.
Yeah.
And I'm believing more and more that we continually choose to incarnate on this in this life until we become aware enough to choose out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've said that, and
yeah.
Keep going.
No, it's just an interesting thought that I never really thought that I don't want to use the word stuck, but in some ways that's the only thing I think sometimes we get stuck here in incarnation loops until we become aware enough to go, wait a minute.
Well, and
I'm more than this.
There's a part of me though that wonders if this is the ultimate destination, and
that's an interesting thought.
The whole ascension story is just another story. It's just another layer of a matrix, and it's, what if they're all playgrounds? And depending on what experiences, on what level we want to experience, it's not like one's higher or better or more enlightened or whatever. It's just like, it just is. And what if this is the destination? Like there's such depth of experience and feeling and connection and density, and to me, I see God, and I don't, source, universe, whatever. It's, how do you name the unnameable one? As everything. There's nothing that's not contained there. And this experience gives us the full spectrum of what God holds.
Yeah.
Of what that energy of God is. Because you can be the highest highs and the lowest lows. And that holding that polarity of experience perhaps is the funnest playground, you know?
I love that thought, and I think and I want to ask you, in your experience, how do I want to phrase this? Why do people choose to have journeys?
What do you mean, like psychedelic journeys? For the experience? How do you even answer that? I could speak to my own experience. It's for a different awareness of myself. Because we're multi-dimensional. This is not the only aspect. This is one aspect of me, right? And that was what was so fascinating to me in my journey was, for me, this ultimate spiritual experience was getting out of myself into some cosmic connection, something bigger, if you will, more spiritual, more enlightened. And my whole journey was about get the fuck in your body and feel, trust, experience, be present. I was like, I didn't expect that. So, and I'm just one expression of the collective on our planet and then intergalactically. Like, I'm just holding one point. So we can try to define it, and it's undefinable, you know.
Well, I'm just asking you what your thoughts are on that, because I think it is an interesting thought. My brain and my part of my wiring is, when we talk about the Virgo aspect, it's how can I be better? How can I, you know? And when you do start going into more of the layers and shedding, and what do I need to look at? Okay, something's up. What do I need to look at now so that I can shed that? And almost getting stuck in that loop.
Absolutely. Well, and it's driven by, I need to do something.
I need to be better.
To be better. And that is an unbalanced masculine energy, right?
Yeah, and yes.
I'm not saying that to you specifically.
Oh, I know that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and this whole practice of, and Trav and I were actually just talking about this when you said, you know, somebody asked you where you want to be in 5 years. We just talked about this because I do feel like on a collective, time's changing. I mean, we're in a time warp right now through the 22nd, I think.
It's so fucking weird.
And timelines have been kind of bizarro. And then you even get stuck into those, like, who cares? Like, if that's the case, okay, if I'm just in the present moment, what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I'm just in the present moment and I'm just experiencing my surroundings, what am I noticing outside of seeing these different pieces? And I would love to offer this. I'm so glad I remembered it. I am seeing that there's more awareness that's happening of people's ability to feel the collective. So, and they will misinterpret it for their own emotions and feelings. And I'm seeing a huge rise in this right now, which I think is really important to speak to, because there was one, I'm trying to decide how to share this. I've noticed that there's people that are having memories that aren't theirs, but they feel like it is. But it's collective memories that are surging right now on the planet. And again, so that the shadow can be brought to light, looked at, alchemized. Okay, this has happened. How do we bring light and love to this and integrate it into the whole and then move past it? How do we heal this, so that the fractal, so it doesn't keep reverberating out? But that would be something that I would love to just put out there, that when you're having a bad day, check in to see if this is your personal energetics, and even just asking yourself, is this mine or is this someone else's? Right. And just that question alone, trust whatever comes in. And anyway, so Trav and I were talking a little bit about that. And then the whole, I'm so over where am I going to be in 5 years, and this whole, that's how we were raised. You know, I think about my dad, well, what's your 10-year plan? What's your, you know, and now it's like, it doesn't, to your point, I never thought I'd be here 10 years ago. I couldn't, even in business. You cannot, you could go try and say, I'm going to shoot for this. It never, and I've said this before, I'd love for any business owner to come and prove me wrong, that whatever they predicted or they forecasted for their 3 and 5 year plan when they were starting a company, let me know if you actually hit that mark. Oh, and it could be over or under, you know what I mean? In my experience, it never fucking happens. Life is life.
And it's a practice of non-attachment too. I think I was thinking this on the way over. I'm such an idealist, and because of that, I hold such a high level of expectation for my ideals, and sometimes project that on other people, and I get disappointed when those ideals aren't met or those expectations aren't met, and that's no fun. Like, I apologize to all of those in my life that I've held this holding of expectation of them showing up in a way, and learning how to let go of that and just let the moment be what it is. And then based on the moment, allow my movement to be inspired that way, which is a whole different experience of, okay, I want to be here in 5 years. Here's my checklist. If I do this, 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 and this, I will get there in 5 years. Instead, it's that presence in each moment and allowing the truth of each moment to then guide my next movement. And that is stepping in from the unknown through the unknown, being informed by spirit, right? And the spirit, you could call that the feminine energy, then creates the energy for the masculine to move you forward. And that's that dance, right? And so it's saying, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm okay not knowing, and I trust that life always shows up in my favor, however it may look like. And maybe that's some really hard shit, and maybe that's some really beautiful shit. Most likely it's a dance between the two. And being okay with that, because otherwise, from my experience, I get disappointed and I get judgmental, and it damages relationships with people and with myself, right? When I don't show up in the way I expect myself to show up, there's no grace there, and sometimes I really don't understand other people because it's so not the way I do life, and yet their way isn't any worse or better than mine. It's just their way. And so
it's how they're choosing to express.
And letting go that practice of good or bad, right or wrong, and just it is, and what's my alignment in this moment, and what's my next movement. That has been a huge shift in how I'm living my life.
I love that, isn't it? I love when you have those awarenesses of, oh, wait a minute, maybe I could show up a little differently, or or whatever those moments are.
Well, and like circling back to new moon in Virgo, I feel like that is the energy of this new moon, is really letting go of those patterns, shedding those layers so that we can be more present. We're not in the default brain mode. We're not in the default
subconscious
patterns of living, but instead each moment is a conscious choice.
And this again, though, goes to, on a collective level in the planet, we are asking to break down systems, regimens, the ways that we've been holding ourselves in the world and expectations, even going down to schooling. Like, all of this right now is asking to come apart. And that is why we're seeing mass destruction on our planet. That is a big part of the reason why we're seeing it. And I was, again, I know a lot of people I bring up schooling because this is something that I've been somewhat aware of, but haven't really been aware of it. But it was spoken to in this podcast I listened to yesterday. Candace Owens was talking about it, and how it has been a breeding ground for conditioning our children to different aspects. And she was talking specifically about Lyndon B. Johnson, and how they both do not like him, and he was a huge racist, but he's actually idolized in the school system because he signed, I don't remember what it was that he signed, but it was something that was it was already in motion from when JFK was president, and he signed it, and it has to do with African Americans and freedom, to my knowledge. I can't remember what it was that he signed. And so he's touted as this quote-unquote hero, but he was a huge racist, like massive racist. She talks about how he would never call any person that was of color by their first name. He would call them the N-word. And he would do all sorts of, she's like, there's recordings of this. He was a horrible person. And I'm like, I had no idea about that.
Well, because it's not taught in school.
Right. And so it is, back to what I was saying with when the collective, speaking of the collective energies, when we're asking to have a different experience in our life, it's going to manifest out in the world. So now we're seeing it expressed in a massive, massive level. So again, then we're going to also feel it individually to what you're saying, then it's more parts of me of how am I holding myself in these old patterns that I'm actually asking, wanting to release. And it looks like many, many, many different colors, many different layers, many different reasons, many different emotions.
Yeah.
You know, for you had that awareness. For me, I'm having these different pieces of letting go of control, and really at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's more layers of control, and not, you know, especially when you come, and I think when we were talking the other day of what do we want to talk about this week, and I'm like spitting out because I'm like, I don't even fucking know. I don't even know how to create anymore. And there's still an element of that. Like, how do you create in this space? And I'm learning that. So one of these days, maybe we'll get to speak on that. But I know what I'm learning is it is just the moment. Even with oh, this is what I was going to say earlier too. There's a kicker on this one, because manifesting, for example, when we move into the 5D, manifesting is something we will do instantly.
It's happening so quickly.
But if it happens now with an unconscious mind, we're going to manifest a horrible, you know, and in some aspects there are some levels of that happening right now. But so I'm driving up to my class the other day. I think I shared this story with you, and in the north where I was talking about it shedding all sorts of layers, and it was shedding so much of my belief systems and my old holdings of me, the old teachers. It's timelessness, not pulling from the past, you know, the ability to create what we're co-creators of the universe. And do I really believe that? Can I manifest, right? That's something that I've, so on the way up, I'm like, I haven't heard Holly channel. She does trance channeling and she's amazing. I haven't heard Holly channel for a little bit. Oh, maybe it'd be cool to do something on my birthday and have people over. And I just had that thought, and then I let it go. And that night I get home and I'm on Facebook, and she's created an event channeling to Source. She channels to Source. And it's on my birthday. So I message her and I'm like, Holly. And she goes, it's so funny because Holly is a great example to me of someone who really does, both my Hollys, who really does live in the present and in the moment. She goes, I hadn't even been thinking about doing a channeling. She goes, that morning, and she's like, it's okay, doing a channeling, and you're doing it on the 19th. Yeah. And I'm like, and there's a part of me that goes, did I just manifest that? And there's a part of me that doubts it. No, it was just yada. And it's like, why do we do that? Yeah. Why can we not believe, yep, we're co-creators with the universe? And and it also brings consciousness around, shit, what are my other thoughts? Because it was just a thought of, oh, this could be really cool, and da-da-da-da-da. So it's like, oh, what else am I thinking that's probably putting energy out into the universe?
Yeah, totally. The words, as it is above, so it is below, and as it is within, so it is without, are taking on whole new meanings in this experience. And for me, the practice of making the shift in the collective, making a shift for the greater good, is to live my singular life with the utmost presence and alignment and attunement that I can. And the more conscious I get within myself, the more that ripples out and shifts things energetically. Because I see everything as frequency and energetic. Everything is energy to me. Like it's kind of like... Well, it is. It's proven. Yeah. This table is 99.99% nothingness. Yeah. And it's just the construct of our mind that gives it, that creates the space that it holds. Yeah. Like in the movie The Matrix, that was a mindfuck for me back in the day, in my Mormon days. And I was like, whoa, because it hit me on such a level. And where they're looking at the computer screens and it's just the codes, and those codes represent movement of people, and I was like, what? And now I feel like that's how I kind of view life now, is it's this interconnected web, and I have my point on the web, and whatever I'm experiencing on my point of the web creates ripples and either pulls other pieces to me on my web or sends it out away from me. But yeah, I know I've shared this before, but what you just said just took me to that place of we are such powerful creators, and I really feel like when we can own that, everything changes. And that's where, for me, I step out of fear. Because if I'm the one creating the ripple from my web, from my point on the web, then I have a choice of what I draw to me, you know?
when you're definitely living a lot more of a conscious life versus a subconscious. And I believe we spoke to this before too, but one of the pieces that I have loved and really been trying to embrace more and more in my shamanic medicine practice that I hold is the idea of being in communion with all things and being a co-creator versus our Western mentality that has been taught that we are separate, and that there is something outside of us that controls the outcome, that we have somebody to blame for, or we were, and this is religion obviously that I'm speaking to, that it has been a foundation of the America, the Americas, America, of somebody to blame, somebody also to go to when you're wanting something, and it's this one thing, this one person, instead of feeling the energetic vibration like you're talking about the planet, and being in this co-creative and this union with it, of understanding, as you're saying, as above, so below, as within, so without, and understanding that on such a different level than how both of us were taught and raised, and the vibration that has been on the planet, in America, I'll say just in the States, because I know it's different in different parts of the world, but that has been something that, when I said I second guessed that, it's because it's one of those, well, geez, was I worthy enough to do that? And did I really just create that? And it is that separation of self with the energetics of the planet. And it really, when you think about it, it's silly. Of course we're co-creators of our world. Yeah. And we do create and we do manifest and we do all these beautiful, amazing things, and we are not separate. Yeah. And again, it's just, and this is the patriarchy, the masculine energy that has been holding, that has understood this ability that we all carry, that has tried to suppress it, tried to control it. And I remember, for some reason, this is years ago, I was listening to Abraham Hicks, who said, she was channeling and said that the people that really set in motion the things that have been in motion for as long as they have, let's just say they're men, this patriarchy, these group of men, because they obviously hold the masculine, not obviously, anyway, they did what they thought
history has been.
Yes,
it's been men in charge.
They did what they thought was best for, it's like as parents, we do what we think is best for our children. Yeah. So in the mindset that they had, even though they could understand all sorts of these things, it's like, oh, well, we're going to control this and actually put different things, different boundaries in place, so that you don't misuse this or abuse it. And it reminds me of Green Tara. We were pulling her card the other day, and she talks about how when she was choosing to incarnate in one of the lifetimes, they were telling her that she needed to be a man. And it's like, no, I'm going to be a feminine in this expression. And anyway, I think that is something that, to what I was saying earlier, as far as the masculine that's dying and how do we hold that and honor it, in some good or bad, right or wrong, letting go of judgment. That was what was asked of them that they did. They not asked, they chose to do. And it's put this thing in motion and has had this huge ripple effect for how long, until we start saying, you know what, we want to have a different experience. And now we're trying to put something else into motion.
Well, and when you say they, it's really a we, right?
They, we, yes.
Yeah, it's just one aspect of the whole, and
it's easier to, I feel like it's easier to go, okay, these people that I have somewhat of a, how could you, it's easier for all of us, especially if you don't understand the oneness consciousness.
Absolutely.
To go, okay, say it's my dad who put this into play. Can I actually look at him and go, he was doing the best with what he knew at the time?
Yes. And I guess for me, instead of saying them, it's a we as a, I don't know, progression of consciousness. We're doing the best we knew how, and that's the holding. Yeah. That's the holding, instead of judging it, instead of pushing it away, instead of calling it wrong. It is what it is. It's where we've been. It is our history. It's the story, and we can hold that story as part of our collective. And what has it taught us? What have we learned? What have we experienced? What have we grown? Yeah, like I look back on my life, I've had some tricky times where I was not my best self. And if I keep holding that part of me in judgment, it just creates separation, right? So on a collective level, this polarization of it's us versus them, it's light versus dark. It's no, it just is. And how do we hold it? How do we see it? How do we love it? And how do we integrate it into
bringing it into the whole? A
different experience of a conscious choice rather than repeating these unconscious fractals. I had this vision when you were talking earlier that in our bodies, right, we're made up all of these cells, and all of these cells have different programs that they're running, like a hair cell creates hair, a liver cell creates liver, you know, but they're all conscious within our experience of a body. So if we take that onto a big level, and our planet is a consciousness, and what if each of us are just a cell informing the consciousness of the planet? And then the planet's consciousness is just one cell of something big, you know what I mean?
So there's a virus happening on the planet, and the body is attacking itself until it clears it out and it goes into a healed state. You know,
potentially. Like, I mean, you could keep going bigger and bigger, and none of it is separate from God. None of it is right. None of it is wrong. None of it is good. None of it is bad. It's just experience. What if that is the holding? Getting out of needing to blame someone, getting out of needing to point the finger and saying this is wrong, and instead just saying, I'm choosing something different. This does not feel in alignment to me. And when I say alignment, in my experience, when I'm in alignment, it feels good. There's a flow. So I'm using the word good because I don't know any other way to explain it, but there's a flow. There's a sense of contentment.
It feels good, or it feels positive, or it feels negative. It's just an experience.
That's how my body informs me. Like if I make a decision and I start feeling bad, I don't sleep at night, like all of these things, it's like, oh, pay attention. This is out of alignment. This is out of me. Okay, how do I pull it back in? So there's a flow. There's a movement forward in a way that feels supportive. How's that for a mind fuck?
No, I love it. I love it.
I love the big ideas. I really do.
So we probably should wrap up.
What's the ask there?
Well, I mean, there's so many different asks, and everyone can have their different takeaway from this of what you want to try and what you want to try on, maybe with everything that we're saying. But with what you just spoke is, you know, maybe the ask is asking yourself each day, where do I want to have a different experience? How do I want to hold this differently, especially in the chaos and the struggles that a lot of us are facing? How do I want to show up differently? Maybe that's the ask.
It's honestly that what's going on in the world is not going to change whether or not I'm looking at it or not. What's going to change is how I choose to show up in my day. And like one of my friends said, if you choose to watch a shit show, you're going to get shit in your eye. You know, and then some people are drawn to move into the shit show and participate because of whatever holding there is for that. And that's an alignment, you know?
So how do you want to show up differently today? Maybe that, I think that's our simple ask.
Simple is always the best.
Anyway.
All right. Well, have a happy birthday on Saturday.
I'm excited for the channeling and getting together. It should be fun.
I've been celebrating you all week, just so you know.
This has kind of been a hard week, so thanks for celebrating.
You're welcome. Every day I'm like, oh, it's one day closer, but I really thought your day was Friday. So yay, now get another day to celebrate. Okay. Have a good one.
Much love to you all.